So last week, OpenAI announced ChatGPT 5.
Yeah, to a lot of fanfare and a huge wah-wah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about AI viral stunts and how a lot of the companies are overhyping and then under-delivering, and you're starting to see a lot more backlash from fans, and obviously, haters. What's changing is that fans now are jumping on this and just being like, why are you overhyping things if you're not actually gonna deliver anything? Um, so, I mean, I think we all saw the Sam Altman tweet where it was like the picture of the Death Star. Wow, he's like hyping it as like this big, huge thing. It's also a little questionable because, like, are you saying you're the Death Star? Or are you saying you're,
Yeah, like, which one are you?
yeah, right. He then responded and said, "No, we're the rebels." And then
Like,
people
oh,
were
you
like,
are?
"I don't think."
I don't think you are.
Yeah. So it was really funny that like he went that way. Um, but the bigger thing here is that most of the commentary that I saw was just that it wasn't actually changing much. It didn't fix the long-standing issues like hallucinations, basic reasoning. Like it just ended up being a tiny upgrade, you know?
So I think the other big thing with GPT-5 was the way that Sam Altman had said it was going to be more accessible to more people
Hmm.
because it's free to everyone, though with capped limits. And yeah, I mean, I think it is more accurate than previous ones, but with this rollout too, they also deprecated previous models or kind of folded it into 5, right? So you don't have to choose which model to use.
Hmm.
But a lot of people really liked 4. So that
Yeah, I
was
mean, we're
also
seeing the
upsetting.
backlash of that,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like
Yeah.
there was the 3,000 people that petitioned for it to go back. I mean, I
Mhm.
saw loads of screenshots from like Reddit users complaining that they wanted the old version back because they felt that they had lost a friend, that they, had lost the love of their life, that they had lost, somebody that they were seeing like as a parent figure, which brings up a whole other like issue about, whether that's what we want as a society is for people to rely on AI so much that it's like their only friend or the only people. I mean, it's not a person, right? But the only thing that they talk to and like share their deepest, darkest feelings with. And then I saw that, some Altman also kind of like tweeted about that, the situation of like why they felt that they should move towards a model that doesn't respond as like gratiatingly or as amenable as the previous versions. And then people kind of were calling it out like, oh, sounds like you're hating your users, So I just think like overall it ended up not being a really good rollout for them. The other thing I wanted to call out was that GPT-5 has been like hyped for like 2.5 years as being like this huge change that was going to come out and just like wow everybody. And it just ended up not doing that. I also want to bring up the example of Cluely, which this past week, rolled out a few more marketing campaigns.
Wait, let's refresh people's memories. Cluely is basically the cheating app that
Yes, sorry.
secured a lot of funding a while back.
Yeah, so they secured, $15 million from Andreessen Horowitz, for their cheating software, which has, since been, changed into more like enterprise sales software. They had gotten all this hype, and then they actually like rolled it out. They had like a launch tweet. Their CEO, Roy Lee, tweeted it out. And I, was keeping tabs on it because I was like, oh, let's see how this goes. And yeah, I mean, the main thing that you see from like the comments are like, oh, wow, like this isn't actually anything like new. It's like transcription services, which, we already have. Like it kind of gives you basic like information for like, sales call, which is like what they were touting as like this big thing. So I think it was just another one of those things that people were just like, wow, like you've been out here like hyping your product and yourself as a CEO, going on like TBPN, being on every podcast. And then like the actual product comes out and there's just like, nothing there, So I think, they kind of went back, licked their wounds a little bit and are now trying to like roll out again another like launch by doing these like viral stunts, including the Times Square billboard, like the merch. There was another oh, they bought a like $1 million car, and people are like, what does this have to do with like the product, you know? And is anybody using the product, right? You know, on the one hand, you can say that the main thing that they're looking for here is to just get attention, right? Get eyeballs so that people, you know, click over to their website and start using it. And you know, their CEO has been adamant that yes, people are actually using this. Like, we just don't say, you know, who it is. And Amanda and I talked about that, you know, previously, where it's like, you know, what companies are going to want to admit that they're using cheating software. Um, but one tweet that someone put out this past week, she was talking about doing a hiring interview, and she was like, it was really sad because we could tell, me and another one of the hiring people could tell that they were using AI to like answer all the questions, because they, you know, would repeat the question back to us, and we could tell that they were reading off of something. So it was like,
Was this
it
a
wasn't a
video
natural
call?
thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's like, it was like really weird and awkward because like, you know, we could tell, but we didn't know how to like discuss it, you know, like with them. But I don't think that they'll be moving forward. So
Oh my
that's something else to
gosh.
kind of keep an eye out for, right?
I could be such an uncomfortable and uncomfortably direct person. I probably would have
Yeah.
just asked them real time. I
Yeah.
would have been like, "Are you using
Yeah.
an
The cheating
AI
software.
tool? Like,
Yeah.
hey, I
Yeah. Yeah.
understand like interviews are hard, but are you doing
Yeah.
this? Like, I
Yeah.
really need you to just answer authentically,
Yeah,
please."
yeah, yeah. Oh, she called out that they were answering in the star format. You know, that's like you're describing a situation, you know, the tasks you were assigned, the actions you took, and the results you achieved. So she was like, they're basically just reading all this, and like we could tell. So it was just like super awkward. Um,
Oh
and it was
gosh,
just
I
like
just
a
want to say that that does sound really helpful as a
yeah,
framework to review, but you know, maybe like you as an individual can learn the framework and try to practice it. I'm all for finding new frameworks and formats, but
yeah,
oh, the secondhand
yeah.
embarrassment I feel for this person.
Right? And so that was another thing that like made me, you know, think about just the way that Cluely is selling their software. They're saying like, oh, it's working on the background, it's doing all this stuff. But we don't really talk about the human side of things, where it's like the human then has to go and pretend like they know all this stuff. And most people aren't the best actors, right? Like they just can't, you know, flow as well as you would like. So you're going to have a lot of situations like this where you have, you know, someone that's asking you genuine questions that they want to know the answer to, and then you're trying to like robot back AI answers to them, and you sound awkward and weird. And I can't see that being an effective way of like getting hired at companies. So just something to think about there.
Yeah, definitely.
um but yeah, so some things to call out here are just like the dangers of overpromising. You know, we talk a lot about that here, where you know you don't want the expectations of your users to be so outsized that when you finally roll out the product, it's not what they wanted, because you're going to upset them even more. And a lot of people are unwilling to trust you after that. So you're going to have to work even harder to bring them back again, you know, someday. So really trying to like discuss like how you're, you know, talking about your product, how you're messaging your consumer. All those things should be talked about beforehand, and not posting, you know, a Death Star tweet out there that gets people hyped about like, you know, what this could mean. Um,
Yeah, I'll add as a SaaS or software marketer, what the thing that really grabs me the most is the fact that they deprecated the previous models without giving you an option to go
mm,
back to it.
yeah.
'Cause you know, previously you would be able to go back to previous models and you could choose your models depending on the task that you were doing. And obviously I understand that the whole point of GPT-5 was to streamline everything. What users were seeing was that queries were taking a lot longer, and it's probably because it's going through the most reasoning that it can as a
Mhm.
default, which isn't great because sometimes that's not what you want, just depending on what query it is that you've run. And so, anyway, my point is as a more so just as a software marketer, how like it where I work at SparkToro, an audience research startup where we help people do research on their audience. And anytime we have a new change, or when we've had, or even when we rolled out the newest version of our tool last year or this past year, we've maintained access to the previous version, but messaging very clearly, you know, that we're going to be deprecating the previous version, at X time. Until then, this is the new Spark Toro. Just really trying to educate people on the new platform and kind of trying to meet them where they already are by saying, yeah, you can access the previous one. Here are the limitations that you'll run into. Here's where you may or may not want to use it. And please understand that this is going to be deprecated on, XY date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. But it also makes me think that like the OpenAI folks were, had drank the Kool-Aid so much that they're like, everyone's going to want the better version. Just get rid of the other one and just give, people GPT-5 because it's so much better and it does all this and all these improvements. But because it was incremental changes, most people wouldn't notice that, like, and all they noticed was like the voice talking back to them.
Right. It became a little bit more corporate-y or just more, in a sense, like a bit colder. Even if the quality of the average answer was higher quality, like even if it was a little bit better or more concise, I think, people, I mean, what you were saying earlier, people were like, I feel like I lost my friend, I lost my partner, because because the experience for the user it's like you're talking to a different person.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that makes sense, right? I think part of it is like, I think it goes back to we're wanting that human element, right? And so they made, GPT-4 a bit more human, and this time they're trying to make it more like an AI. And so people reacted like, what? No, So it's really interesting, right? Because it's like, I'm not sure how they kind of go back from that, because if, they are doing it. I mean, when Sam Altman said, like, we want to do this for like the better of society so that people aren't getting attached, right? And we're seeing a lot of stories come out about like AI psychosis, coming out.
Right. And part of what Sam Altman said in one of his statements was like, if a user seems mentally unstable in some way or sensitive to something, we don't want their chat GPT to feed into that.
Yeah.
That wasn't his exact quote, but it was along those lines of like, we don't want that. We don't want the agent, or so to speak, to reinforce that behavior. And so I do think it's interesting that OpenAI was basically like, let's try to go in a version of what we think is more ethical. And people were like, no, give me my best friend, give me my partner back, or whatever it was.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. But yeah, just thinking about the larger societal implications of what that means, right? When it's like, not only are people assuming that the AI is like their friend, but that AI is known to be more agreeable and like just like on your side a little bit more. There's less pushback. There's less, going back and forth as like not even a conversation, but like to getting them to rethink what is actually happening. And not letting them devolve into like, sycophantic like fans that are supporting everything and anything that you do, like I've seen some say, that popped up saying like, well, you ended up cheating on your wife because she wasn't there when like, so like she should be understanding. And it's like, whoa, there's like human dynamics that like just don't translate into how actual humans would, respond to you. Yeah. So we'll see where that goes. They did end up allowing people to revert back to previous versions if they wanted. But at some point, I assume they're going to want to figure out how to move everybody forward the other way. Okay, and then one other thing I wanted to bring up is just the fatigue marketing that's happening when you kind of overhype your product. A lot of the times we're seeing companies really come out and like, launch these like super sleek, launch videos about like what their product is. And then when it comes to like the actual product, it's not where they say it's going to be at, right? So I think it's creating this mentality within customers that like they just trust all companies, including like most AI companies, less overall. So it's like raising the bar for everybody else because there's a few companies out there that are, overhyping their own product. So you need to be aware of that for your own company, like in how you're marketing yourself to your customers so that you don't get caught up in that and have people expect more from you than is actually what your product does. And I think companies need to realize that like, your product, like the features that you already have, the things, that you're building are enough to be able to bring in consumers. You just have to be able to market them in a way that is interesting. And a lot of companies are failing to do that. So instead, they kind of like pitch the future of like where the product is going to be, not realizing that people don't want to have to discern between where the product is going to be, 3 months, 6 months, a year out. They just want the product to function now the way that you're saying it's going to function. So stick to that. And then if you want to talk about more of like, the product roadmap and where you're going, like be clear that that's what you're doing. Like this is where we're like heading, so that you don't mix up, what your consumer is thinking about you.